All right, welcome to Farewell, Mr. Nice Guy. I'm your host, MNG, and I have Benoit Kim on the line with us. So he has came and he decided he wanted to go ahead and bless us with some of his knowledge. So we're about to go through a few questions, have a few conversations, and see what it's all about. Benoit, go ahead and tell the people what's going on.
Well, so first of all, I don't know about blessing, but I'm happy to share my 2 cents based on my background in clinical practice. But I mean, I'm a person who wears many hats, right? I think I'm a human first. We live in this era of social proof. Everything's about smoking mirrors, optics, reputation, which is matter. Those are part of the era we live in, and we do got to do what we got to do for businesses. But I do think that some of us, we get caught up in the metrics, all of these performative stuff, and we forget that we are human first and foremost. So I'm a human first. I'm a clinician. I am a registered psychotherapist in state of California by the board. I have my own clinical practice, and I'm also the podcast host for Discover More. It's currently a top Apple podcast top 100 on the leadership chart as we speak. I'm a husband, and I'm a proud cat dad. We rescued a cat recently 2 months ago. So that's been a highlight of my life. But yeah, I'm someone who just want to share my knowledge and my experience with men's mental health specifically, even though I work with all populations. I really think that there's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of barriers that as men we have to plow through. And I know that's going to be a focal point for today's conversation, which I'm very excited about. But my mission statement is to really educate the people about what is emotional health, why emotions dictate everything we do, not the other way around, and why humans were social animals, but we're not logical animals, and why logic doesn't always work. But yeah, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, and I love having these conversations with other impact makers.
So just to walk me through your walk me through a little bit about your podcast, Discover More.
So I'm very big on play on words. So I've had the podcast for 5 years.
Okay.
I know now in 2024, everyone and their mothers and cousins have a podcast. I thankfully started this process years ago. So this is my 5th year doing this podcasting thing, which I had the opportunity to transform from a passion project to now an actual business with team members, with 3 team members. It's a lot of work, but that's my passion. And going back to what I said, I like playing with words. So discover more implies curiosity. My mission with my podcast is when people think about my podcast, I want that to be the synonymous and equating to curiosity. I think curiosity needs to be the center of everything that we do. If you're curious, you can actually move through fear. If you're curious, you can work through your trauma, hurt. If you're curious, you would choose love over fear. And I think curiosity should be the bedrock of everything that we do. So that's discover more about insights, expertise from the podcast. But the second meaning is it's a call to action. I want to encourage all the listeners, new and old, to discover more about a topic they found enlightening or helpful from that conversation with the experts I have on. So it's 2 meaning. A, it's curiosity, because I think it's the centerpiece of everything I do. And the second thing is it's a call to action to hope for people to discover more in their lives. That's what's helpful with their mental health or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. So when you speak about discover more, it translates to me like just like you said, curiosity. And I think that is what more people need, is to be more curious and less judgmental when we're talking about mental health, when we talk about all type of situations, because men go through mental health. And it doesn't seem like it, because we carry so much on our shoulders. We carry so much on our back. We have to endure so much more. And it seems like that we have to go through more trauma, but then we have to hide all of it. So can't nobody know that we're going through this trauma. We can't express it. We can't talk about it. And the more we try to talk about it, the more we try to express it, it seems like we kind of get looked down on for having emotions and having a mental say that we're not okay and we're trying to be better. And I think we're approaching a situation where more men are starting to speak out about their mental health. They're starting to speak out more about some of their trauma and triggers. They're starting to speak out more about their emotions. And I think that's more beneficial for men going forward, to release some of them boulders and stuff, that weight that they're carrying day in and day out, just walking in and out of the house, trying to find peace, trying to find connection, trying to find a little bit of everything. So I love the approach, and I love the understanding that curiosity, that people should be more curious about things. I really like that type of
I love
mental.
what you're saying, and I love that we're both people of color. You're Black, I'm Asian. And in
Yeah,
our cultures, mental health is highly stigmatized.
it
And I'm
is.
sure you could relate. I'm a 90s kid, I'm in my 30s.
Okay.
Only two emotions that men or myself were taught that was acceptable growing up is happiness and anger.
Right.
Sadness is not allowed. You can be
No.
happy, you can be excited, you can be pissed off, but you're not allowed to be sad. Don't grieve. That's the boulders you talked about. I love the
Yeah.
analogies. Something I want to share with that is I think I want to talk about patriarchy very briefly.
Okay.
One thing I didn't talk about in my introduction, since I've worn many different hats in different stages of my life. I'm a former policymaker. I'm from Philadelphia, city
Okay.
of brotherly love. I worked
All
at a
right.
pretty high level with the mayors of Philadelphia. There's a bill written in my name before my career pivot. I bring in Philadelphia because Philadelphia is a city that's known as a city of grit. We
Okay.
are a gritty city. So is Chicago. So is all the major cities. But Philly specifically is known as a city of grit. Angel Duckworth, professor of psychology, she wrote the word growth mindset, the book, and also grit. And that's also in Philadelphia. But I'm talking about my backgrounds and Philadelphia with men because, like you said, a lot of us we're not really sure if you can open up and let down our trauma armors. That's why I call it.
Yeah.
Because I'm also a veteran, right? In the battle, think about this. It's very normal and expected for men to go into a battlefield with their armors on.
Right.
Of course, no one in their right minds will go into a battlefield without the armors, the batteries, the weapons, all this, the whole nine, the 90 pounds of gear.
Mm-hmm.
So going into a battlefield with the armor is expected. It's not a choice. It's almost expected and required of you. But here's the thing, coming back and getting off the battlefield, choosing to take off our calluses, the boulders, the trauma armor we've built as a protective mechanism, that's a choice. We have a choice to take off our trauma armor despite us not feeling safe, PTSD or otherwise.
Right.
So again, going into a battlefield, you're supposed to wear your armors, protect yourself. But when you get off of it, you need to take that off because it's
True.
uncomfortable. It isolates you. It stops you from connecting with other people. It prevents you from being vulnerable and opening up about your inner child, who you really are as men, because we're humans first and foremost.
Right.
Going back to my introduction. So I agree with you that I think now in this era where it is more mainstream, even though I don't like that word, and I
Yeah.
think it is more acceptable for men to display our emotions because all of our emotions serve a purpose. I'm a man of God. I'm a Christian personally. And what I like to tell my clients and patients, MNG, is that every emotion was created for a purpose. Sadness, grief, anger, happiness,
Mm-hmm.
they all literally serve a purpose clinically. And this is a fact. It's not an opinion, right? Neurobiology shows that every emotion literally serves a purpose.
Correct.
Just like seasons, we need the winter, we need the spring, the summer. If it's only sunny, drought. Like LA, I live in, where California, there's always drought because it's always sunny. But if it's always raining, we flood. No lives live. So
Yep.
you can't always be sunny. You can't always flood. We need the ebb and flow, the seasons. So that's why I'm very big on emotional health for men. Because if we only display strength, because that's what tough men do, when are we going to have the opportunity to practice our other emotions that
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
literally as part of our evolution?
You're absolutely right. And I have a very familiar story to tell. Come to that now. I'm an 80s baby, okay? So one of the stories I want to share with you, and it speaks to what you're talking about, and it kind of drove me crazy when me and one of my family members was talking about this. He told me that at his father's funeral, he did not cry. And I said, "What do you mean you didn't cry?" He said, "I didn't cry." I said, "Man, I don't ever cry." And I said, "Man, you can't be that tough to not want to cry at your father's funeral." Even for me, I don't think I started actually crying for relief until like my late 20s. And that's when I actually understood, like, it's part of a healing process. is to let out frustration, you know. And there was just times where I just had to get it out. And to my to my own credit, I couldn't get it out sober. You know, I had to kind of soften up my exterior to let the interior even just come out, because it was so much frustration, so much anger. And even now, there's still so much tough exterior where I don't want to, like, I don't feel a need to cry. You know, I can break my ankle and not one tear will be shed. You know, and it just provides some kind of relief when you just shed those tears. And it's even when I was at a funeral for my grandmother, she raised me, and I try my darndest not to cry. The point in time that I actually cried is when they closed the casket, because that was, at that point, that was like infinite. That was the end. There was nothing else. Put her in the ground. We're done. And it hurt so much, but there was so much relief from it that, you know, I haven't cried like that in years. But even when I think about it, I still cry because it's such an emotional event for me, and I can recognize that. And I think, you know, more men need to have emotional events to just let those feelings out, let those emotions go, and just embrace every emotion that is coming through them. But society makes it more difficult to have those emotions and to embrace those things because of the stigma that comes along with, this is how you're supposed to be. And you're raised by a generation that pushes that over and over and over again. You can't show emotion. You scratch your knee when you're a kid, you bet not cry, or I'll give you something to cry about. And in the Black community, you know, it's rough because every child, boy or girl, is bred to be tough exterior, because the world is not going to show you it's not going to give you any favors, and not going to show you any mercy. And you have to be tough, and you cannot cry. You cannot look for anybody to lean on. It's all on you. And you become either antisocial or social antisocial, where you're social, but you don't really trust anybody. So, because you can't show them too many emotions, you know, you kind of hold back some of your emotions, and then it becomes a difficult struggle back and forth. And then you fall into that category of whether you're doing it right or wrong. And you fall into that mental health pocket because you don't understand your emotions. You want to show them, but you lash out because you can't mentally comprehend your own emotions, because you were never taught to mentally comprehend your emotions.
So I want to share a quote with everything you said. It's a famous mental health adage. It's one of my favorite quotes.
Okay.
The opposite of expression is depression. What does not get expressed gets depressed.
That's good.
And like you said, like, how do you get better at running as an athlete? You run more.
Right.
How do you get better at throwing football? You throw more football.
Right.
So how can we possibly get better at exercising and practicing and being more attuned with our emotions if we don't practice displaying our emotions? Trick question, you can't. You literally cannot get better at running without running. So
Right.
to be more emotionally attuned and being closer to our own emotions by expressing it healthily, you have to express it. That's the only way. And another thing I want to ask all men, this is a question I used to ask myself, right, growing up, since I wasn't always this mental health advocate. Like I said, I'm an Asian person from my community. It wasn't always a thing. I think a lot of us men, we would rather look good than actually doing good. Because when we're acting with this bravado, navigate our life with this tough guy exterior, using your word, we look good. We're able to block off the judgments. Oh, bro, don't be a B, bro. Right? Don't be whatever words, right? All these peer pressuring, all these name calling. And it's a fear of judgment. Everything we're talking about, our inability or refusal to display our emotions, like sadness or crying at a funeral, for example.
Yeah.
And I feel for your friend. I promise you, he still has a regret to this day that he wasn't able to properly grieve for the death of his loved one. Mm-hmm. That's a regret that he will live for the rest of his life. But it's too late, agree. Right? But it's not his fault. He never had an opportunity and chance to practice crying So when the moment came that he had to cry, he couldn't because he had no muscle memories. He literally had no pathways, neural pathways. That's a term. It's the pathways in our brains. It's a foundation of all habit formation. Every habit requires neural pathways. He couldn't cry because he had no pathways in his brain that taught him how to cry. So of course he couldn't cry, right? But going back to what I was saying, so many of us, we get caught up in the optics, going back to how I introduced myself. It's all about smoking mirrors. It's all about optics. It's all about perception, controlling the narratives. But what about actually doing good? What about actually healing? What about actually being able to tell your loved ones, hey, I love you? Doesn't matter if it's your best friends or a girl. Say, I love you. I appreciate you for what you did. Thanks for showing up. Thank you for being by my side. How many men can say that to their loved ones? Not very, unless you've practiced. So again, the question is, do we want to look good, which is all facade and optics and no foundation? Or are we actually willing to do good for the sake of getting better and self-betterment? I think that's the question we have to ask.
I agree. So jumping into our topic, and we talked about so much about mental health, and our topic is definitely men's mental health, but it's definitely about prioritizing that in relationships, because we know that men will take on a burden of her relationship, and it's thankless, in any relationship, whether you're a parent, whether you're a child, whether in any situation, it's a thankless position. But we know men definitely do not prioritize their own happiness in relationships. So how do men prioritize that with themselves in relationships, whether it's a healthy relationship or they assume or believe it's a healthy relationship? How do they go about saying, I need to make sure that my mental health is in check while I'm in this relationship or before I get into a relationship?
I mean, there's a few folds to your question, so I want to kind of break that down.
Okay.
So I agree with you that I think to thrive and build a healthy relationship, healthy as in whatever that feels right to you, since what's healthy is different for everyone. I can speak clinically, but we're not textbooks. We're not just statistics, right?
Right.
So again, mental health is one of the requirements to thrive. Have you heard of the saying, hurt people hurt people? Have you heard that before? Right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me quickly share an analogy and a metaphor that I'm a very visual thinker. So let me paint a visual picture.
Okay.
So the quote is hurt people. And I promise I'll make this all fit with your question. What does that mean? Is intergenerational trauma. If you're unhealed with your trauma and wounds, whatever they are, you will bleed and hurt other people unintentionally. What do I mean by that? So let's say I have a cut open wound on my arm. I didn't attend to the wounds. I didn't put a Band-Aid on it. It's still pretty raw and bleeding. What would happen if I skip the crucial step of taking care of my health and instead went to shake your hands? I was like, yo, good meeting you in person, man. Let me shake your hands. But my wound is still open. I will bleed all over you. Yes. I will literally bleed all over you because I didn't take care of my wounds yet. That's what it means. Hurt people, hurt people. This is why so many trauma gets remanifested in relationships. And I love relationships as a topic. That's one of my expertise as a psychotherapist. I tell all my clients and friends and whoever want to talk to me, right? Because I'm a talker.
Yeah.
I tell them relationship is my favorite topic because it's an extension and reflection of your relationship with oneself. Your relationship with your parents. Yeah. Your relationship with your best friends. Your relationship with whoever. It's a reflection and extensions of how you treat yourself and what is your own relationship with who you are, your sense of your identity. Why am I talking about hurt people? Because that's what it takes to prioritize mental health and healthy relationship. If we as men want to be able to show our significant others, wives, partners, whoever, that, hey, relationship matters to us. Why? It's the home base. All of us need a safe home we come home to. Relationship is much more than just a relationship. It is our home base. It's our safe haven. It's where we can fall back to, let our hairs down, take off our mask. Since all of us use different code switching, different masks, different identities throughout the day, right? Just because I'm pissed off at a coworker, I can't just cuss them out. I
Right.
could, but there are repercussions. But then when you're with your loved ones in your intimate relationship, you can let your hair down, be yourself. Say, oh, I had a rough day. I need your support. Can you hold space for me? I want to vent for a bit because it's been rough these days. These are only possible when we feel that safety. It all comes down to safety.
Right.
So how do we prioritize mental health? By doing the work. By stopping the cycle of hurting people. By stopping the cycle of bleeding over everyone we touch because we're not working on ourselves. And I promise you that everything we avoid, we numb, we run away from, will eventually come back. Because the only way to empty out what's within us, the hurts, the trauma, or whatever, is expressing and working on it. A water does not evaporate in a water bottle by itself. You can let it sit there under the sun for as long as the plastic melts. Water will still be there. Some water will vaporize, but the water content will be there until you decide to open the valve and dump out the water. Water's analogies for the work we have to do. But I think so many of us, we use this word, the compartmentalize. Men love using that word. Oh, yeah. I'm really good at compartmentalizing my stress. Nah, I know how to deal with that. I got this. No. Men are good at suppressing and avoiding.
Right.
You can't compartmentalize and separate different stresses. Things will spill over. Like shit always spills over. Excuse my French. I'm actually French, so I can say that, right? But my point, so that's what it takes to prioritize. Because what's prioritized? Prior to what? Prior to being in a relationship, you need to get your mind right, your mental health side of things. So that's what it means. We need to do the work. If we really want to prioritize this thing that we love, that we call our home base in our relationship.
And I like your analogy of, using hurt people, because it's been a frequent staple of being everybody saying hurt people. Okay, if you're hurt, you're going to hurt somebody else. But even better yet, the analogy of the blood running over other people, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're bringing your current problems, unresolved problems, into a whole new situation. And now those unresolved issues are manifesting themselves. It's similar in thought to, people that have particular triggers from past events, but they're not allowing themselves to grow out of those triggers. So when they do go into a new relationship or a new situation, they find themselves healed from them triggers. But every time that they go into a relationship, something happens, they get triggered, maybe a defense mechanism goes off, and then they start distancing themselves, or they start making mountains out of molehills unnecessarily, and continuously moving forward and trying to get the relationship to get back on track after they realize what they did wrong. So it's like, okay, well, now let me get this back together so we can make something of it, or I know why I did this wrong, and make all these excuses instead of identifying the root problem and then just fixing it from there. And I think a lot of people, and even in my daily life, when I talk to people about their relationships, or they want to have conversations about what's going on and they want to vent, and my first question is, are you venting or are you looking for some type of guidance? And one of the things that I've learned is never to give people advice. Let them direct themselves to their own answer. So that's a Q&A session, because I don't want to be, and I've been there before, I've gave unsolicited advice. I've gave all kind of advice to people, and they're understanding, and then they run with it and say, oh, well, I listened to you, or I did listen to you, or it didn't work out that way. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But I've learned to, let me just guide you to the answer. And because you find your own truth, it means more to you that you found your own truth than for me to sit there and just kind of keep on, yeah, well, you should do this and you should do that. Well, if I was you, I would do that. I don't, get out of that whole pocket right there, but let people find their own truth so they can identify what the root issue is and then just grow from it. And I think so many people are running, or to your point, hiding behind the armor and saying, I don't want to face the person that I am because I believe I can bring somebody in and they're going to make me better, or they're going to heal me, or they're going to help me be better, which where I don't have to think about what happened in my past and I can grow beyond and grow past this. And that just never happens because you get wrapped into the first few months of the relationship or the first year of the relationship, but then the past comes back and rears ugly head. And then now you're back into the hurting phase, and then you're going to turn around and hurt them. But then you're so deep into the trenches of it, when you walk away, now you done left trauma on them. And they can't trust and they can't understand, or they're still trying to make their way out of the trenches that they just left with you.
I love taking some notes whenever I'm talking to like really insightful folks. So I wrote a couple points down. I love what you said about triggers. So let me first start with the truth spoken that you talked about, not giving advice. The golden rule that all therapists, right, accredited professionals are taught in school, masters, whatever, is never give advice. First, that's intellectually lazy. I could help you out this time. I could give you a helpful feedback tailored to your needs and individualized. I mean, generic blanket advice, that's not even an option, right? But even if I give you a catered, personalized, custom feedback this time, I help you out. Great. Everything's amazing. It's all dandy. I help you out next month again. Amazing. Crisis averted. Fires were put out. But what about next time when you don't have me in your corner? What if I'm no longer a therapist? Who are you going to go to? Advice giving is lazy because we're destroying and taking away opportunity for that person to learn from their own experiences. Because experiential learning sticks. Advice by others, it fades. It's very fickle. Mm-hmm. It's helpful for that time being, but it doesn't last. It's like a one-night stand. It feels good for that time being.
Yeah.
But it gets dull and boring.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what we call womanizers, right? Like I said, I'm married, happily so. In my early 20s, I was in Greek life, part of the fraternity in college, whatever, right?
Okay.
And what do we call womanizers? All players. Bro, damn, you got games, bro. Amazing. And then listen to the shift. You graduate from college. We're out of this incessant, stress-free social bubble that we call college. Not even college, just any social settings. And then you get to your mid-20s. The one-night stand starts to lose its flavor. It's not as enticing as it used to.
Yeah.
Because people don't really care about it anymore. You're not in this social setting that we call college. And then you enter your late 20s. You get really lonely. You enter your 30s. Do you know what we call people who are players and who only do one-night stands and still live in the glory of the past? We call them losers and loners.
Yeah.
Because one-night stand sounds cool in your early 20s, but towards your 30s, it's a very lonely life. Yeah. Right? So that's like what advice is. It's cool and has a purpose. And I'm not discrediting one-night stands, right? Everyone's different. Yeah. My point is feedback serves a purpose, but it doesn't last. That's why we don't do advices. But that's why, going back to what I said, expression is the opposite of depression. So many people are afraid of entering therapy, especially for men. Why? First of all, because of vulnerability. Oh, if you see a therapist, it means you're crazy. All these labeling culture. Oh, you're weak, man. Well, you can't think through your own problems. You have to talk to a professional, a stranger about your feelings. So vulnerability is one reason why it's hard for men to seek therapy. Yeah. Here's a second reason, less talked about. We're afraid of being confronted what we know as truth deep and down, shared by an expert from the other side, who is unbiased, who doesn't know us, which means what? They're not fluffing. There's no BSing. There's no masking and covering it up with all these, whatever packages. It's real. So they're afraid of being confronted by truth in therapy, because that's what therapy is. It's truth seeking. It's confrontation with facts, right? So many of us were afraid of saying these things because we don't know it's truth until we spoke it into existence. That's why
True.
therapy is powerful. I mean, even you said it, right? You hold
Yeah.
space. You ask people, do you want feedback or do you just want to hold space for fans? I can tell a lot of your girlfriends in the past really taught you well. I learned that from my wife, right? She's like, but this is how you know men who's been trained by a woman really well. But it's true though. Like it's all about intention. What's the intention?
Yeah.
Like they just want to vent to us. They don't want solution. They don't want a problem solver. They just want to share our presence with them. But
Hmm.
sometimes they want feedback. It's all
Yeah.
about what they want. But yeah, I love when you talked about truth seeking is the best thing we can do if you're not an accredited expert or professional, hold space
Yeah.
and trust in their capacity to express the truth they've known deep within. They just need an avenue, an opportunity to share this truth.
And I like what you said. And you know, I'm going to take it back to a cultural thing because I know in the Black community, therapy is like the last resort, and secrets are held tight within the Black community. Like I hate to say it, but we hold family secrets very close to the chest, and we don't let those family secrets out for anybody. Nobody knows them. Even the grandkids or the grandkids don't know all the secrets, all the events that happen in a household. You don't get to know. You don't know any of that stuff. So when it comes down to it, and you're living your life, and you realize that mental health or mental illness running your family, and your mindset is, well, I'm gonna go to therapy, and then your parents tell you, well, why are you going to therapy? What is wrong with you? Like, I raised you better than that. And you get that type of criticism for trying to better yourself for the future, or just better yourself for that point in time, or given the tools to be able to address future issues and current issues and past issues that you're currently dealing with. But they don't understand, and it's a generational thing, it's a cultural thing, that therapy is just like anything else. You go and get preventative care every year, but you won't go and get mental health treatment. You won't use that as preventative care. Now, I remember my first time going to therapy, and it was very powerful. It was very rewarding. And if it wasn't for how much I had to pay to go there because of my insurance, I would have kept going. And it's funny how in some insurances, and I don't know if the landscape is changing, but back when I was going, mental health wasn't a priority for like as considered part of health insurance, because some insurances had like very high deductibles that came along with insurance. It wasn't like going to the hospital where your bill is going to be a few $1,000s that they're going to pay out, and then you have a small deductible that you have to pay. It's not like that. So when you, like, my deductible for going to therapy was like, I think it was like $750 before the insurance even kicked in. So I'm going there and I'm racking up this bill to pay $750, and I'm only doing 2 sessions a month. You know, by the time I get to the end of the year, I still haven't even paid the $750. So I haven't even reached my deductible amount for the insurance to even cover it out of pocket, because it wasn't at the forefront where it was considered an urgency that people's mental health was even something to consider. Now that was before the pandemic. I can't tell you, I don't even know what the landscape is in post-pandemic, but it looks like more people are concerned about their mental health in post-pandemic than they were in pre-pandemic. But even with my sessions in therapy and the reasons why I went, I took away valuable tools to be able to move forward in life. Now, would it be more beneficial? Yes, if I had kept going, I would have gained more tools and more understanding and more awareness as I had moved forward. But you at that time, I was only able to take so much with me due to financial reasons, whatever, and insurance. But I was only able to take so much with me. But I can definitely say that going to a therapist at the age that I went at, I wish I would have went sooner. I wish I would have started in my early 20s and just kept up with it as much as I could. And maybe my understanding for how to deal with certain things and how to address certain things and identify certain feelings that I'm having while I'm having those feelings would be more essential. One of the things, even before I went to therapy, one of the things I started to study, and I think this probably was after therapy, but one of the things I started to study is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence became one of like my favorite subjects to actually read on, and took like several classes on them, because it helps you not only identify your emotions and how you deal with certain things and what triggers you and why that emotion is evoked once you're triggered, but it helps you recognize emotions in other people and provide influence to that. And I was like, emotional intelligence is going to be something really big, especially for management style and how you be able to address your employees and everything. But from a mental health standpoint, just being able to walk into a room and notice that your kid is off or your spouse is off, something is unrecognizable. Maybe it's not in a tone of voice. Maybe it's body language. Maybe it's eye contact. Being able to recognize just those little nuances and details are so much more beneficial than having a conversation and somebody just kind of gets filling you with fluff just so they can just stop talking and say, you know what, I gave them what they wanted. Now they can leave me along and don't have to address what the actual issue is.
I love what you said, right? It's like, let me explain therapy in the most simplest form.
Okay.
Just having another human being sharing a same space with you, and they're the entirety of their existence and the entirety of their purpose for that 1 hour or an hour and a half, based on whatever therapy format you choose. Their entirety of their existence for that time block is to dedicate their existence to hear you out and hold space and share that presence with you. What do people say? Presence is the present that keeps giving. That's what we call that now, presence, right? How many people have that in their lives? If you're married, if you're in a long-term committed relationship, you have that. If you have a cohesive, amazing, loving relationship with your family, you might have that with your parents.
Yeah.
But everyone got their own stuff going on. Even now, I'm sure you have a bunch of things happening in your life. I have a bunch of things happening in my life. I'm going through something with my family as we speak. We all have stuff going on. So many of us, we lack that constant in our lives, that constant support. So the bottom line is therapy is that. It's this constant space that's entirely acceptable for you to be selfish. I tell all my clients to be selfish during our sessions. I have a lot of Black clients, Black and brown. I tell them that when you leave this office, there's a bunch of shit you have to worry about.
Yeah.
The safety, the politics, the culture, whatever.
Yeah.
The poverty. But in my sessions, you can be selfish. You can for once let down your hair and just be yourself. You want to cuss? Cuss for the entire session. You want to talk about systems? Do that entire session. You want to talk about how your mother abused you growing up? Say that. It's whatever you want to say. Just be selfish for once, please. I do that. So that's the bottom line. That's what therapy is. But there's levels to therapy. There's talk therapy. There's, of course, different therapeutic modalities. Talk therapy is the level 1 of therapy. There's advancements, just like anything in life. That's the first thing I want to say. And the second thing I want to ask, because like you said, your mom's like, why? Is that how I raised you? You're weak. Why do you have to talk about your... And trust me, I'm Asian. It's the exact same thing. I promise you, right? Family secrets, carry that to your grave.
Yeah, yes.
Don't share that with nobody, right? That's the exact same way, right? So here's a question I want to ask. Who do you go for bank stuff? Banker. Who do you go if you want to buy a house? Real estate agents and mortgage loan officer.
Yeah.
Who do you go for your dental problems? Dentist. Who do you go for your preventive care, like you said? Doctor. So if we work with professionals with every aspect of our lives, like except for mental health, no, you don't go to a professional. But everything else in your life, you work with professionals.
Right. Yeah.
Except for mental health. Well, let's talk logic. How does that make sense? Tell me one aspect in your life that you work by yourself. Nothing.
You're absolutely right. We feel more comfortable going to somebody that we don't have to talk to, like a dentist. They may ask us a few questions. Got any pain? No. Okay, well, we're going to do this cleaning. We're going to look. 30 minutes, 40 minutes, you're out the door. Hour, you're out the door. But to go and talk to somebody about something that's vulnerable, that's weighing heavy on you, so you can understand yourself better and not be scared to move forward with your life without these triggers, traumas, and baggage. It's unbecoming. It's like, I don't want to do that. It's easier to live with the evil and the guilt. And I don't mean evil as in a bad way, but it's easier to deal with the guilt and the trauma that you're walking around with, and walking through, with a field of broken hearts behind you, than to fix yourself, to be able to take somebody else and say, you know what, we can be whole together. So let me ask you this. So knowing that men have a hard time addressing their feelings, what steps can they take to better themselves, whether they want to go to therapy or not? How can they start building the blocks to say, you know what, I need to address my emotions. I need to address my mental health. What steps can they take to do that?
So before the steps, I just want to make a quick public service announcement.
Okay.
I just hope that all the dentists can stop trying to talk to me when I have my mouth full. You know how they always ask you questions trying to make small talk? It's like, bro, man, you're operating on I can't answer your questions. Stop talking to me, But they do it every time during my dentist appointment. They try to talk to me. It's like, I can't talk to you. You're literally operating on my mouth right now.
They write in there, hey, so what you do for work?
Your hands in my mouth. I can't talk to you, doctor, right? But jokes aside, I do agree with you that it's a stepping stone, right? It's a building block.
Right.
Like going back to your friend's example who couldn't cry during the funeral despite his desires and wants. It's all about practice.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I want to quickly share some statistics. Because I'm a veteran, I have two specialties as a psychotherapist. One is relationships and the other is suicide prevention. I'm very passionate about suicide because I'm a veteran. I lost a lot of friends to suicide and the suicide epidemic.
I would say that I lost some friends to suicide as well, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's
real.
It's real.
Yeah, the ripples of suicide really ripples through.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to propose values. Like people are like, that's a selfish, whatever. It's not our place, right? People will make those decisions under the most dire and desperate circumstances.
Yeah.
And if we were in their exact same shoes, we'll probably make the same decisions.
Yeah.
But this is what I would say. According to statistics, only 3 causes of death are getting worse now than before. I know people always says like the world is getting more dangerous. It's not quite true. If you look at all the metrics, the world is objectively getting safer. Obviously, we're getting more civilized. Except for 3 causes of death. It's getting worse. First is terrorism. Death by terrorism is getting worse. Second cause of death that's worsening now than before, death by suicide. And the third is mass shooting, death by mass shooting. So those are the only 3 causes of death that are worse now than 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And that's a fact. You include all the wars, all the infections, World War II, World War I. By every metrics, the world is literally getting safer, except for those 3. Why am I talking about suicide? Because suicide is the only cause of death that you can prevent. Like, what is death? Death is this agreement we sign at our birthright. By being born into this world, we literally make an agreement with fate that by being born, I agree to die. It's a birthright. It's a weird way of thinking about it, but death is our birthright. It's guaranteed.
Yeah,
it's
true.
The only guarantee in this world is you will die. But death by suicide is entirely preventable. But why does it happen? Because you feel like you're going through so much problems in your life. It feels too much. You feel like you're alone. You feel like no one understands what you're going through. Yeah. No one can understand the burden. It's only you. There's no one to talk to. There is no healthy relationship. Everything we're talking about, you don't have your tribe. So you get so depressed and suicidal that you commit an act of tragedy by taking your life.
Yeah.
That's why suicide happens. Of course, it's a gross oversimplification. But why am I talking about this with steps to build our mental health? Answer your question. Because it is a practice. Suicide prevention is a skill set. Killing yourself by suicide, it's not a weakness. Plenty of Navy SEAL team, special forces, elite military personnel kill themselves. And I promise you, they're not weak. They're mentally stronger than anyone else in this world. That's what makes them tier 1 operators and special force and elite military personnel. Yet, they take their own lives and they kill themselves. Why? Because they don't have the building blocks or the skill sets to display and be vulnerable when they need to. They don't know how to take off their trauma armor, even though the threat is no longer, that they're safe. So I'm tying this very long answer to your question. What do we do to build these building blocks? What are the steps to take care of our mental health? First step, you find one person in your life that is in your corner. You find one safe space with no conditions, no stipulations. That one person you can go to when you're feeling low or when you're feeling high. You don't want to go to your friends only for good news. You don't want to go to your friends only for bad news. That's called trauma dumping. It's not very therapeutic. Instead, you have someone in your life that hopefully checks different boxes. We have different people that fulfill different needs, but that takes skills, right? It takes how to open up, how to make meaningful connections, which is getting harder and harder with the rise of superficial relationships. So step 1, find one person that's in your corner to help you practice your muscles, to practice that muscles of being vulnerable, to see if I open up, will they actually judge you? And a lot of these things are self-narratives. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't actually know that people are going to judge us unless it's like the example you said. If your mom literally tells you, I did not raise you like that, yes, confirms your mom judged you. But not everyone's your mother. Not everyone is that critical friend, right? So that's step 1. And step 2, keep expanding. Once you can move through the discomfort of opening up, because it's a discomfort, it's very uncomfortable. You're going to feel, ooh, I don't know about this. What if they talk down on me afterwards? What if they make fun of me? What if they use what I share with them as an arsenal, as a weapon next time we argue? What if?
Yeah.
We can spend the rest of our lives in the islands of what ifs, and there will still be what ifs left. Or you can try something out and really test your distress tolerance, another clinical term. Our tolerance with distress, with uncomfortability. So that's step 2, by seeking discomfort. So step 1, find one person, start practicing, just opening up, have a heart-to-heart conversation, see where that leads you. And build on that like a snowball. And step 2, seek discomfort. I want to share a quote. It's my favorite quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, the former First Lady. She said that on the other side of fear is everything you desire. Like going back to your example, I'm sure before you broke your bank was seeking therapy because of the deductibles.
That's what I did.
But I mean, jokes aside, like before you decided to pick up your phone to make that reservation, to get into your car, to drive into that office location, I could be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you spent months of agony, thinking, researching, talking to different people. Like, it's not easy.
No.
So I'm sure you were confronted by fear points. But then you step through it, and what awaited on the other side of fear? Like you said, insights, growth, knowledge, self-awareness, healing. So on the other side of fear is everything we desire. That's something I want to encourage as a third step. It's just do one thing that scares you. And in terms of relationship, vulnerabilities, and mental health, and see where that takes you in life.
That is true. And I think people have to realize that, just like what you said about the 3 things that are continuously getting worse, there's one thing that is constant in life, and that's change. And if we're not changing, we're not evolving, we're not seeking a level of mental evolution, because physically we can't. The only evolution physically we do is either we're going to build muscle, we're going to build fat, we're going to lose fat, we're going to lose muscle, that kind of physical. But mentally, we need to change. our mental awareness. We need to change our perception. We need to change our understanding. We need to change and evaluate ourselves consistently. I'll explain this. So you heard of the test 16 personalities, correct? Okay, so so this is what I would describe change. I took this test when I was in college, and it was a psychology class, and this is when I fell in love with psychology. And I took this test, and I couldn't believe how introverted I was versus extroverted. And for people that may or may not know what that term is, introverts tend to shy away from social activities. Extroverts tend to go towards social activities in the simplest fashion. I took that test 10 years later, probably maybe 1 or 2 years into being a supervisor. And when I did that, I became an omnivert. And that is the distinct balance between introvert and extrovert. So I was still 51% more introverted, but I was 49% extroverted. So my numbers actually changed as the years went on. And I also plan on taking this test when I go into my 40s. And the reason why is because for every decade, something changes. You accept a little more, you accept a little less. And it's the same thing with relationships. What you accepted in your 20s, you're not going to accept or want in your 30s. What you accept and you want in your 40s may not be the same thing that you wanted in your 30s. Same thing what you were saying with the one night stands. It was a staple and it was cool in your 20s, but then when in your 30s, everybody's looking for marriage, everybody's looking to have families, everybody's careers are different. Your wants and needs are different. So you change. And for those that are not changing as those decades pass, we talk about 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, your priorities change during that time. And the same thing with your mental health. The way you were thinking in your 20s and the things that happen to you can carry over to your 30s and affect how you deal with things, affect how you tolerate certain situations, affects how you build relationships. And then though whatever happens in your 30s, if you don't heal from that, goes into your 40s. Now, by that time, most people are kind of set in their ways and they're not seeking help. They're not seeking a level of recognition from themselves or healing at that point. Some are, some not. Then you go into your 50s and 60s and so on, and then you just become a permanent fixture at that point in time of what you have dealt with all through those decades. And now you're going forth, whether you're going to be lonely, you're going to be in a relationship that is bringing you happiness and understanding, or, God forbid that you decide that you want to commit suicide because of the strain and the stress that you have of unresolved traumas, baggage, and triggers. So when we look at change is the only thing that's constant in life. The society is changing. The way we interact is changing. 20, 30 years ago, you wasn't thinking about communicating with somebody over a cell phone, and primary communication is just words on paper, words on text, words on the screen. Everybody is more social through social media. So when we talk about change in any facet, it's the only thing that's consistent that happens in life. And you have to be able to change and grow as the times progress. Your body is changing, so is your mentality. And that should have to be held in check as well.
I love you talked about change is constant. That was literally what I was thinking about. Let's get very astronomical. Like, I'm not an astrologist, right?
Okay.
But let's get really fundamental, because what I think truth is truth, and what is truth will always be true. It's universal. That's how you know if it's true. We call that first principles in science. Right now, we're on planet Earth in galaxy of Milky Way.
Right.
Planet Earth right now is spinning at an incredible amount of speed, literally as we speak. So the planet that we reside upon is spinning and literally changing on a astrological level. What about all the creatures that reside within this planet?
Mm-hmm.
Change is literally, by default, on a most fundamental level, constant.
Yeah.
Change is the only constant.
Yeah.
So I just want to really drive our message home. And one last comment I have about language, like the words. I talk about this a lot on my podcast, just to nerd out very briefly.
Okay. I like
If you look at human evolution, language is the most powerful technology we've ever invented. If you look up top most powerful and potent technologies human invented, internet will only be number 3 or 4. It's not top 2. Number 1 is language. What do I mean by that? It's a lot of theories, right? Theories are man-made, but these are scientific theories that are widely accepted by many scientists and communities. The predominant theory is that for us humans to become the Homo sapiens, right? Because we were not the most dominant Homo sapiens. Neanderthals, they were bigger than we were. Their skulls were bigger, right? But then through the archaeological evidence of fossils, here's what they found. Homo sapiens became the apex predators that we are because they were larger in gathering. This is very important. Homo sapiens outlived and became the planet Earth dominators over Neanderthals who were bigger than we were, who were more physically dominating than we were because we were more social than they were. There were more evidence of gathering and fossils in Homo sapien tribes. But here's the thing.
Okay.
So humans are social. That's been proven, right? We are innately social animals. But how do you become social with other people? How do you socialize? Through communication, verbal and nonverbal. How do you communicate? Language. So think about this. We humans invented this tool, technology that we call language. Think about how incredible that is. Let's really let this sink in. This thing that we created allows you and I to communicate. Dude, we're from different zip code. We're literally different skin colors. We're different cultures. We're different age. We're different cities. But we're communicating with this thing that we call language, and we can externalize what's in the internal. I can communicate what I'm thinking between my 2 temporal lobes with you across the screen. And you can translate what you're trying to say externally with me. You're tapping into my brain waves, and I'm tapping into your brain waves. We create this group flow. Through what? Through this thing that we socialize called language. Language is the reason why we became apex predators. Language is the acquisition of language is what made us social and dominant on this planet. That's the prevailing theory, and a lot of people buy into that, right? So what am I trying to say to this? Whether it's therapy or reading a book or just talking to your loved ones, it doesn't have to be therapy. Exercise your language. Exercise the technology we humans created that allowed us to be the apex predators that we are. But how do we exercise language? Through talking, through expressing, through expressions. So here's my call to action to your folks. I want you to discover more, pun intended, action items in your life that will help you to practice expressing yourself. Not what you think people will appreciate, not based on your assumptions, not based on all these mental, like jujitsu, just expressing for the sake of.
Right.
That's how we exercise this technology that we call language. And that's how we drift and move closer to our true selves. Because we're either moving closer to our inner child or we're moving farther. Like the boulders, like the trauma armor, like your friend who couldn't grieve and cry at the funeral. He was drifting farther away from his true self because his true self wanted to cry, but he couldn't. So that's my call to action, and that's how I wanted to close out.
Well, Benoit, I appreciate you coming on to the show. And everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, check out Discover More. Check out their podcast, man. I checked it out. It was really good. So, Benoit, thank you again for coming on to the show. Hey, we going to check you out on the next recording. Peace.